All right, hey everybody. Just I'm going to give it a few minutes, let some people get on here. Hey Rich, how's it going? Good to see you, man. I'll give it a few here just to let some people get on. Then not going to take a long time here. I don't like to talk for hours. I'd rather just go over an issue or whatever, and then let people enjoy their evening. So things have been going really good though with the campaign, with with Members United. I've been making a lot of visits to some plants and parking lots and stuff and gates. So it's been going pretty well so far. Hey Dave, good to see you. You guys have to bear with me. I'm not a social media expert yet, so some of this stuff with Facebook and Facebook Live and people wanting to join on video and all that stuff, I'm not sure what I'm doing half the time with this. So definitely been an interesting weekend and start to the week. With my actually with my home local. Going out on strike. Most of you probably know that. So, hey, Rich, how's it going? Hey, I feel you there, brother. Figuring out how to do this with some help. But yeah, it's an interesting weekend. It's been a long saga for our local and a long fight and, years long. It's a shame some of the things we have to do, that we have to bargain for, but we have to do what we have to do sometimes. So, but it was really good. I took a vacation day yesterday and today. My plan was to go down actually and stand on a picket line, but I woke up Monday morning with the news that they had a tentative agreement. So that was great to hear. So, hey, Chris, how you doing? And definitely still went down for the rollout meeting, listened to the leadership roll out what all they had secured with the strike, and also got to visit the picket line and talk to some of our members out there. And so it was great seeing the energy out there from our members, and and we need to see more of that action. That's what's got to happen. It's this leadership's nationally has been way too complacent over the years, and we just continue to suffer. So, we've got to get product back. We've got to do what we've got to do to get product. And this is one of the best ways to do it is direct action from the membership. Hey, Cody, how's it going? So it was great to see all the, a lot of the members of the local and see them out there and the energy and also the support from the community. Where I come from in Kokomo, there's a lot of community support. They really get behind the unions when they have to fight, and the other locals with their support. It was great just to be able to see all that in action and get to feel that energy. And, as I say that, we got to think about our brothers and sisters at CNH that, they've been out since May the 3rd, and, it's been a battle for them, and, wish them well in their continued fight. And, hopefully everybody gets a chance to support them through their battle and, the other areas that we're taking on these fights. I'll go ahead. Hey, Chris, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. Glad you're on here. Yeah, it was definitely nice meeting you at Toledo the other day, and meeting a lot of the other members over there. And like I said, we're trying to make our rounds as a group, and we got a lot of good candidates that are seasoned. So definitely good to see you and good to meet you. I want to get into this. So basically, what I thought I'd talk about today was bargaining and just kind of how bargaining works for us, because unfortunately, there's been a lot of bullshit that's been put out there recently by some of the other candidates, and one of the organizations that seems to be pushing one of the candidates, and I'm really not even going to name that organization because they have zero credibility. But the bottom line is, those of us that have been in leadership, a lot of us locally and nationally, I will speak for myself, and I'll speak for the people on our Members United slate. We've led with integrity, and we've always fought the good fight. And our mission's always been putting the membership first, not ourselves. And that's the biggest difference with us and the current leadership that's in power and their slate. I mean, the bottom line is the IAB, and like I tell people, it's kind of like Congress. They tend to put their self first and their power first and their control first, and then everything else comes after that. And that's got to change. That's really what this election's about. But there's been a lot of bullshit comments made, as far as my involvement in negotiations in the past, and just flat out lies. So I definitely want to clear some of that up. And, just to give you a little bit of my history, my experience, locally I was a 5-term committeeman and I was a shop chair. And, some of the things I was very proud of what we did as a committee. I didn't do this alone. It's a committee, and it always is a committee. It's not one person. One person's not going to do everything. You've got to have people. You got to have members that are behind you, and you got to have a committee that gets together. Even if you have your differences, you still have to be able to put that aside to fight for the betterment of the membership. And but locally, the sad reality of what just happened at our local when they had to negotiate for this air conditioning and the roof leaks and things like that. The last time we actually secured language on that was back in 2000 or 2003, 2004 agreement, and we were able to make improvements on the tempered air system and fix roof leaks, which some places that may not be an issue, but for a die casting plant where you're dealing with 2,000 degree molten aluminum. It's a hot place in the summertime. It's temperatures are 130, 140 degrees, and in the wintertime it's freezing. So there's a lot of venting and a lot of openings in the building. So it's hot in the summer, cold in the winter, and so it was very vital that they secure this. It's just a shame that we have to negotiate for things like this, but I'm very proud of the work we've done when I was on a local committee of being able to achieve those things. And the biggest thing I think we had when I was on my local committee and we negotiated for locally was the ability to diversify our line of products. We had, those of you that don't know, like the die casting plant that I come from, we predominantly, our whole history was making aluminum transmission cases for the transmission plants in Kokomo. There's 4 plants there, and also small parts like valve bodies and things. So we would cast all those parts. So we were always reliant, as a transmission plant went, we went. We worked hand in hand, and we lived and died together. So when I was on the local bargaining committee, our committee was able to negotiate to bring engine block work into our plant. So that was around 2005 and 6 time frame, and that was a huge difference for our plant, because when we secured that work, it diversified us greatly. So we weren't just supplying transmission plants; we were then supplying multiple engine plants. And for over more than 15 years now, our plant and our members have greatly benefited from that. So, those things don't just happen, and it took our committee and again the membership to get behind us to get that work. And so I'm very proud of that history. Also, when I was a local leader, 2007 national negotiations. I wasn't on the national committee, but when they came out, that's the agreement that implemented the Tier 2 system, and also cut the wages, what they would call entry-level employees, new employees. They cut their wages. Basically, at that time, production employees were making $28 an hour, and entry-level employees would hire in around 14 something an hour. And so, myself, along with Bill Parker, who was the chair of the National Negotiating Committee, we led a movement for anti-ratification of the 2007 agreement, mainly for those reasons, because, you could see down the road where this was going to lead us. And we're here now. It's a shame to say, but, 15 years later, we're right where we told them we'd be, with multiple levels of workers, multiple levels of wages. And that is not what a union is about. We cannot survive as a union. So I'm proud that I, stood for those things as a local leader. I was elected as a national negotiator when I was a local leader in 2009 during the bankruptcy, and again in 2011. And I've seen comments on Facebook about, we gave everything away. Well, let me make something real clear to people, especially at Chrysler. The bankruptcy wasn't a negotiation; it was a mandate from the government, and there were two options in that equation. There was no negotiation. The companies basically went to the government. Everything they tried to screw us on for 20 years, they crammed down our throats, and they used the government to do it. And at Chrysler, it was a very different scenario because we were facing, liquidation. And the bottom line was the government basically came in and told us, here's your two options. You either accept this agreement or you face liquidation. So, and there were a lot of people in the government at that time that really felt like if they would have let Chrysler fail, it would have helped the other companies recover quicker. So it wasn't a negotiation, but during the bankruptcy, that's when we lost. We didn't lose it; it was suspended, but cost of living was suspended at that time. Many of our job security language provisions, what we used to call the base employment level, or BEL, where we used to take a snapshot of the amount of employees at the beginning of the contract, and the company wasn't allowed to go below those numbers. Those were very important things, and as we know now, especially the COLA. But that's the cyclical nature of the auto industry. In the past, in our history, when things are bad, we held on for dear life and tried to get through it. And when things were good, we went after things. And so that's been the struggle here. So in bankruptcy, it was a mandate. And like I said, our choice was take it or be liquidated. So we did what we had to do. And going into 2011 bargaining, when I was a negotiator, part of the bankruptcy negotiations was the government mandated that in 2011 bargaining, we had no authority to strike. So, it really limited us in how we could combat things and fight things. But we were focused on, 15 bargaining and hoping things would turn around. And at that point, be able to go after a lot of these things. And so, after 2011 bargaining, I was put on international staff. I'll tell anybody this, I felt like at the local level, I had done everything I could do. And being from an out of state area, I felt like you had to be in Detroit to be in the equation and really affect a change at a higher level. And so, when I was offered to come on staff, I took the opportunity. And, I've always served with integrity. And, I learned some things fairly quickly and saw how things were working. But, there are a lot of good people on staff up here. I'm not going to sit here and point fingers and say everybody up here is evil. If you think everybody on international staff is corrupt, I don't know what to tell you. Because that's just not true. But 2015 bargaining, that the big hang up for us in that, one of the bigger hang ups was, that should have been our time to come back and really try to work it back at getting a lot of those things that were sacrificed during bankruptcy, such as cost of living, recognizing sacrifices retirees had made, job security language. The first thing we got to do is protect jobs. We've got to secure work and protect jobs. So that, should have been the focal point, in 15. Unfortunately, there were commitments made during bankruptcy with the entry-level workers where it was 25% or the percentage of workers, whichever was lesser, was supposed to be converted to full pay at the expiration of the 2011 agreement in 2015. And unfortunately, the vice president at the time, Norla Jewell, came to us and, he had sided with the company as far as saying that, they didn't, he basically disagreed with the verbiage in the language and said it really wasn't what it said. And, those of us that were there told him point blank, we know what the commitment was, we were there, and this is what our members expect. And so, as you can very well remember, that first initial agreement was voted down by the membership because that language wasn't honored and that commitment wasn't honored. You fast forward to 2019 bargaining, and again, the company's been flush with cash, profitable for 10 years, on a 10-year run, almost at this point. And, so it was a great opportunity for us again to try to go after COLA, job security language, and product. And unfortunately, some of our top leadership in the IEB were still being investigated and indicted. And, in fact, during bargaining, the president of the UAW was indicted. And that's all we needed to know about why we missed these opportunities. And it's one of the biggest reasons why I decided to run for president, because the one thing I've learned, on the national level and in national negotiations is that, and I want to get into how national negotiations work in a minute, but, is the economic issues are handled by the president's office. They bring those in, and because they want to follow pattern. So typically the presidents and the vice presidents, when negotiations gets down to crunch time, they're the ones that are dealing with the major economic issues, which is COLA, anything to do with retirees, anything to do with wages, with tiers, healthcare, post-retirement healthcare, pensions. All of that comes from that level. So it's imperative that we have people in there that are willing to fight and take on the companies. So I've always been a vocal leader. I don't care what level I've been at, and anyone that knows me knows that. Anyone that's served with me knows that. So, I'll stand on my record any day of the week of what I've done. And those that want to run their mouth about it, part of that is their inexperience, because they have no experience to go off of, other than going on Facebook and running their mouth or joining a fringe group, a socialist group, or whatever the hell they are, and that's just hell bent on busting the union. So I really don't care about their opinions. They don't know, and they haven't been there. And but this is a deal. Like, this is just Chrysler's books alone. There's several books here. This is our national agreement. Ford and GM are no different. I mean, they have massive multiple books to deal with benefits, with work rules, exhibits that deal with everything. So this doesn't happen with one person. It doesn't happen overnight. And so the one thing I wanted to touch on with talking about bargaining is just the fact that if this fall, we'll already be beginning the process. So those of you that don't know, coming up here in October, the big three, Chrysler, GM, and Ford, will be having their what we call council meetings. The council meetings, the Chrysler, Ford, and GM councils are made up of all the committeemen and presidents corporate-wide in each of those corporations. So, they meet separately. And when the councils meet this fall, they'll be electing the national negotiating teams. The national negotiators are elected among all of the presidents and all of the committee persons corporate-wide. So, and it's done by sector. So, so they're not appointed by the IAB, which some people have made that allegation that when people were made negotiators, they were appointed. They're not appointed. They're elected by all the local leaders within their respective sub-councils. So each of these councils that we have bylaws that we operate under, and they establish, how negotiators are selected. And they're selected by sector. So like, I can speak specifically for Chrysler, where you have assembly, you have stamping, you have salary bargaining unit, office and clerical, you have parts, skilled trades, powertrain, and then miscellaneous subcommittees. So all of those subcommittees break out, and the committeemen from each of those respective, whatever your local falls under, whichever those subcommittees your local falls under, you elect a negotiator from those committees. So, that's how that happens. And then also negotiating expenses. Typically, when we pay dues, a portion of the dues actually goes to the council funds, and that's what pays for the negotiators and negotiations during bargaining. That was also an area during Norwood Jewell and President Williams' tenure where our leadership got into trouble because they were using joint funds to pay for negotiation costs, which is a violation of Section 302 of the Labor Management Relations Act. So that was one of the issues that the government came in, and there was a ton of money that had to be paid back. So again, so when we do this, I mean, the councils are going to meet this October or November this fall. They'll be electing national negotiating committees. Once the committees are elected, the next step will be accepting non-economic demands from all the locals. So, that's when your locals will be putting out letters, asking you to turn in your demands. And once you submit them by the locals' deadlines, the local committees will then meet with the members. They'll review the demands and vote on them, and then they'll submit them to the national departments. And then at that point, the national departments will bring in the national negotiators, and they'll review all the demands. And they'll, a lot of times you'll combine like demands, because when you get them from all the different locals, you may have 70 demands that'll say, change the production class, change the classification or whatever, or change, joint program language or whatever. So when you have that many demands that speak to the same thing, the negotiators will typically, combine those into one demand or, a couple demands, rather than having 70 demands that say the same thing. So once they go through the demands and get them all put together, they'll establish, then the national parties will establish their subcommittees. So the subcommittees during bargaining, again, are like health and safety subcommittee, skilled trade subcommittee, sourcing subcommittee, so the office and clerical and salary bargaining unit subcommittee. So that's, so they'll break out into subcommittees. They'll assign negotiators to each subcommittee and staff to each subcommittee, and then they'll take the demands that pertain to those areas and start formulating a plan, for what we want to argue for, how we want to bargain for it, and how we're going to present it to the companies during negotiations. So at that point, the biggest process at that point is continuing to meet with the negotiators and reviewing all the demands and understanding what each demand needs and preparing our arguments for that. So, and then also in that process, the national level, we have to file all formal letters for the bargaining agreement, that we wish to engage in bargaining, and also there's federal laws like the federal mediation conciliatory services forms we have to fill out. So there's a lot of legwork that goes into preparing for bargaining. And so, that's the thing. You don't just start out in July and start bargaining. I mean, you think about that. We elect the committees, the national negotiating committees this fall. And then, we start the process of going, getting demands, going through the demands. And all this is happening throughout the winter and the spring. And so, typically, when bargaining begins, it's the initial formalities, introductions, the company side, the union side, and each subcommittee. And then you start reviewing the demands with the company, and among the various subcommittees, the negotiators will review the demands and then explain why we want it, why we're asking for it, and then start making arguments. The interesting thing, in my experience at the national level with bargaining has been, it's in the company's best interest a lot of times to drag out the subcommittees, drag along the meetings, and not really make a whole lot of commitments, because the company knows that they hope in the end the issues get pushed to the top level, and a lot of these issues will fall off the table in an effort to resolve the economic demands, which are the bigger ticket items. So that that in a nutshell is kind of how it works. And at the end of this, then the president's office comes in. They bring in their demands midway through. And so when the president's demands come in, typically they'll come in when they're close at one company. And in the case of, I believe it was President Gettelfinger that did all three simultaneously. All of that strategy is going to depend on where the companies are, where sales are, where things are at that point. That's a decision that has to be made, by the leadership. And, but that's why it's important of who we put in these positions. And why is all this important? When you talk about the president's demands coming in and the president's office coming in, that's one of the things that you have to understand. When a lot of the economic issues are negotiated, it's basically the president and the VP and their corporate counterparts are in a room doing this. It's not like, everybody in national negotiations isn't sitting in there negotiating this. So it's not, I think a lot of people have this misconception that everyone involved in negotiations is in the room for every conversation, and they're not. And that's just the reality of it. So there's a lot of things, we can change going forward, with new leadership. But, when people say, well, you're talking about big three, why does that matter? Well, typically, big three bargaining will set the tone in other sectors, and other areas. So it is important on how we go about this. Given the cyclical nature of the auto industry, that's like I said, when things are bad, we have to hold on to what we have and fight like hell to keep it. And, but the thing we have to really focus on is these last two sets of bargaining, 15 and 19, were a golden opportunity to really get back a lot of things we've lost. And, it didn't happen. So we've got a work cut out for us. And the other interesting aspect of bargaining is, it seems like when we bargain a national agreement, the companies are really quick where they want to implement their priorities from bargaining and get them implemented right away. And then we seem to spend the duration of the agreement arguing over the intent of the language of the demands that we thought were important. So, there's a lot. It's an imperfect process, and we have we have to make it work, and work out for us. And there's a lot of things we need to improve on, but one of the biggest key aspects I think we have to follow is the deadline. I mean, the deadline, for our contract is September 14th of the contract year. So like next year, it'll be September 14th, 2023 is the deadline. And, it's imperative. The deadline has to matter. We've got to get away from this trend. And it seems to be what the pattern of companies get into where, they'll drag things out. We start bargaining typically toward the end of July. And we'll spend the first 2 or 3 weeks, reviewing demands and going through with the companies. But, there's not a real sense of urgency until almost a week before the deadline. And even at that point, if they've already picked a target company, the others are kind of in a wait and see mode. And so there has to be a sense of urgency from day one when we start bargaining. We can't keep doing things the way we've been doing them because it does not work for our members and it doesn't work for us. And if we extend that deadline and drag things out further, and we stay with one company, as we get into the future ones, as we get one done and move on to the next 2 companies, we end up in November, December by the time we're on the 3rd company, which is a really shitty time to be in bargaining and having a lot of leverage. Sales typically slow down at that time. Families are getting ready for the holidays, so so it works in the company's favor. So bottom line to me, if I'm elected, we have to stick to the deadline. The company's got to know up front we mean business. We're not going to screw around, and the deadline's a deadline. And if we're not there, then we got to do what we got to do. And so as I've stated before, when we talk about why is this all important, well, I'll tell you why it's important. Because there are only a couple candidates running for president that have any damn experience at all in this. And as I've stated before, people can claim experience don't matter. Experience matters a lot. And I'm going to say this point blank. The president's position is not an entry-level position. I tell people my story all the time. When I got elected skilled trade committeeman the first time, I walked in the gates the day after my election. I took about 3 steps and I had that oh shit moment when I thought, oh shit, now what do I do? And it literally took me a good term or 2 terms to learn how to be an effective committee person and really get a handle of what I was doing. Now, you take someone who hasn't been elected before or has been a one-term steward or whatever, and you tell me, how the hell are they going to walk into national bargaining and oversee this whole process and work with national committees and work with the VPs and work with an IEB when they've got 0 experience at it? I'm sorry, that does not work. And it's your livelihood that's at stake here. So, you need to think about that when you cast that ballot. There's not going to be time for a learning curve. When we finish this election, whether it's in the 1st of December or whether there's runoffs and it goes into January or February, there is no time here for a learning curve. As soon as those elections are complete, we're in bargaining, we're in planning, and we don't have time to let people play catch up and figure out how to do this. So it's vital that you think about that when you cast your ballot. And I'll tell you this, all of my experiences serving our membership at every level of this union, whether it was local, whether it was national, whether they were good or bad experiences, they've prepared me for this moment in time. And I'm smart enough to know that one person isn't going to change all this, and that's why we formed a Members United slate. We've taken people, we've talked to a lot of people, tried to get people to jump on board. The people we have are the people that stepped up. They're tested leaders. They've been through plant closings. They've been through spinoffs. They've seen it all. So we've got a great group of people on this Members United slate, and it's very important that you think about that when you elect, when you mark that ballot, because one person's not going to change all this. It's going to take multiple people. The IEB already has 4 seats secured, the current IEB, because there was no opposition in 4 of the regional director seats. So they've already got a starting nucleus. So we have to elect multiple people that are running in opposition of the current administration if we're going to affect real change. So, when you look at this, again, I'm going to go back to this. That's what this election is all about. It's about putting you first, putting the membership first. And the bottom line is your 2 options are this. You vote for the current people in power where they continue to put their power and their control of this union first, and the membership comes after that, or you elect new leadership that's going to put the membership first. So those are your choices. And, I look forward to talking to you more, down the road here as we get into this. I highly encourage everyone. We have the candidate forums coming up. This Thursday is the candidate forum for the Secretary Treasurer's race. So, I highly encourage you to watch Margaret Mock and watch that debate. And then I believe Monday night is Monday night is the vice presidential candidate forum. And then next Thursday will be the presidential candidate forum. The Monitor is overseeing these forums, and they've appointed a person, a labor reporter from the New York Times, who is going to moderate these candidate forums. So they'll be done on a Zoom format, and then at that point, once they're complete, you'll be able to watch it as it's happening. But also, the Monitor is committed to putting these candidate forums on the Monitor's website and also on the UAW's website. So it'll be a chance for our members to actually get to see and listen, to the candidates. Candidates on our slate: Rich Boyer and Mike Booth for vice president, Margaret Mock for secretary treasurer, and then myself for president. So I highly encourage you to take the time and watch those candidate forums as they happen. If you can't watch it as they happen, then be sure to hit those websites and check them out. So scrolling through some comments here real quick. Sorry, it's hard for me to keep up with comments and talking and everything. I'm just not that talented. So third generation UAW adjusting for inflation. I have less purchasing power. You're damn straight than 14 years ago. And that's the big thing. I mean, when we talk about inflation, and it shouldn't even be an issue for us right now, because honestly, I mean, the cost of living, a lot of people, we tend to talk about it like it was eliminated during bankruptcy, and it was suspended. And, there's no excuse. It's been 13 years. These companies have been flush with cash. Profits have been through the roof for years, the greatest economic expansion in our nation's history. So there is no excuse in hell why COLA was not a priority and was not brought back during 15 or 19 bargaining. And the other thing was this job security language. Those are vital. I mean, and they're, leadership's just missed the bar, and unfortunately, 90% of it's due to the fact that they were too busy trying to figure out who the hell was going to be president and who was going to be indicted next. And it's a damn shame. But, with that, I'll wrap this up. I appreciate everybody coming out and taking time and getting on watching. And with that, I guess I'll wrap it up, and just appreciate you guys, taking the time to listen. And we'll do some more of these coming up here. So in this next week, take your time, and if you get a chance, check out these candidate debates, and we'll keep this thing rolling. So thanks for your time, and we'll be talking.